This is Pastor to Pastor with Pastor Sam Rivera and Pastor Omar Lopez.
Awesome. So what do you want to talk about? A couple of things on relationship we were discussing earlier?
Yes, I want to talk about something you had mentioned earlier in our conversations, or
Correct.
in one of the many conversations that we had, where a pastor or a leader has to define friendship.
Correct.
You want to take us down that path?
Well, it reminds me of Proverbs chapter 13:20. It says, walk with the wise and become wise. And then for a companion of fools suffers harm. So the scripture says, if we want to be wise, we need to get around wise people. And if there's anything that needs to be intentional and deliberate with leaders, is to get around people that can give you wisdom. Not only you give out wisdom, but you receiving wisdom. But then the scripture also says, a companion of fools suffers harm. So it's basically saying you don't have to be a fool to suffer harm. All you have to do is be a companion of fools. Just hang around them.
That's good.
And so you become who you hang out with, right?
Now, since you've come here,
right,
I feel wiser.
So do I, actually.
I actually feel wiser.
Nice.
I believe that you stretch me and you give me a different angle and perspective on issues and situations. I also believe that you brought up a valid point about, you gave the analogy of a bus driver.
Correct.
Did you want to share about that?
Yeah, so basically I said, most leaders, we're not as deliberate and intentional when it comes to relationship, but we need to see ourselves as the bus driver. So as the bus driver is picking up people along the way, some people come in on the bus and they sit in different places. Mm-hmm. Some sit in the front of the bus, some sit in the middle, and some sit in the back. But we may have everybody on the bus, but we need to be intentional where they sit. What's their position on the bus? That gives them closer access to the driver. You're the driver, so not everyone should have the same access.
Okay.
Those that are further in the back don't have the same access to.
But they're still on the bus.
Still on the bus, but you need to be able to define and align your relationships and align people where they need to be in your life, because not everyone should have the same access.
That's good.
Sometimes Christians thinking that we have to treat everybody the same.
Okay.
And in reality, we see in Jesus, he didn't treat everybody the same. He loved everyone. Mm-hmm. He valued everyone, but he treated people differently.
But he loved them.
He loved everybody the same. And he valued them, but not everybody had the same access of relationship.
Okay.
We have the 12 apostles, 12 disciples. You have the 70. And then you have the 3, which most of us call the inner circle.
Right.
Which was Peter, James, and John.
They were tight.
They were tight. And they were the 3 guys that saw him on the mountain,
correct.
and then also were there in the garden. Mm-hmm. And so these guys seen Jesus at his best, and then seen Jesus at his lowest point. But Jesus gave them access to that. The other ones did not see that. Doesn't give us an explanation. I think when you define and align relationships, you don't have an obligation to explain why certain people don't meet the criteria.
Okay.
But you need to be deliberate and intentional as far as who gets the access.
So you have to determine who you deem qualified,
correct,
to be able to handle the relationship as it gets closer to you.
Correct.
So someone sitting closest to you has close access or proximity to the driver's seat.
Correct.
They get to see what the driver is doing.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
They get to see if he's turning left or he's turning right, when you put it on drive, when you accelerate, when you slow down. But those way in the back of the bus, they can hear the motion.
Correct.
They can feel the friction, but they're not necessarily directly connected to the head.
Right.
So they're playing an important role in the back of the bus.
Oh, definitely are.
So, and it's interesting that you say that. That means that there's a season that God will have you in the back of the bus.
Right.
And then eventually you'll make your way to the front or toward the front of the bus.
That should be the goal.
And then you have access to the driver.
That's correct.
And that comes with maturity. But you were referring to how much access anyone should have of you in your life.
Yeah, because basically the time that you invest in people and the energy that it takes, that time you can never get back. That energy you can can never get back.
Okay.
So we're deliberate about a lot of things. We're wise about a lot of things in life. We're wise about business. We're wise about the place that you live. You're wise about the person that you marry. But when it comes to relational wisdom, many times as pastors, we just think it's just blanket. Everybody gets the same relationship level. Everybody has the same access. Not true. Actually, sometimes people need to get off the bus. Those in the back sometimes never even make it to the middle because at some point, for whatever reason, they need to get off the bus.
That ride may not be for them.
It may not be, maybe for a season, and it was a reason for that season, but they need to get off and somebody else needs to get back on.
Okay.
And you need to be deliberate and wise as to who you are aligned with, because who you're aligned with eventually becomes your purpose partner, becomes part of your call. And I want to align myself with the right people. That's why I want to be around wise people. That's why I hang out with you. I get some wisdom from you and some impartation from your life.
I appreciate that kind gesture. So I'm looking at this twofold. I'm beginning to see, with the explanation of the bus, that there are people who God will also prompt to get off the bus.
Correct.
That they need to determine whether or not this is their cup of tea. This is
right.
So they have to be receptive also. It's not just for leaders to know, all right, you have to limit the circle of people around you and the ones you allow close to you. But there are people who need to understand that when they are allowed access to the leader, they have to cultivate that access also.
Absolutely.
There's a responsibility on the side of those who are supposed to be in your close circle.
Correct.
They're supposed to develop. They're supposed to take instruction, heed to counsel, practice what they're hearing,
no doubt.
Apply it to their life, right?
Correct. And I mean, even Paul talks to Timothy and says, impart into faithful men who will be able to teach others. And so Paul's saying one of the qualifications is faithfulness. So Timothy is not to just impart to anybody. So when it comes to impartation, when it comes to relationship, when it comes to aligning our relationship, we really need some wisdom and insight. Because you can't be on the same level with everybody. There's just too many people in the world, too many people in your life to try to extend yourself on the same levels of relationship. And it's part of the natural world. I mean, even in even within our family, I mean, your kids, when they grow up and move out of the house, because of the relationship level, they can come to your house and go open the refrigerator.
Yes.
But not any stranger can come in your house.
Not everybody has access.
Not everybody has the access to, because there are levels of relationship, and there's history, and there's credibility, and there's a level of trust that you build in order for them to sit at the front of the bus, right?
Okay.
And or to be in the level of relationship that they are with you. So it's important. I think sometimes leaders think that they're obligated to give everybody the same amount of time, the same amount of energy, and to have the same level of friendship. It's impossible.
So what would you say to a leader that thinks that he could be Superman and have all these friends and get tight and close with all of the sheep and allow them access to his life?
I think you're going to burn out, and you're not using a wise wisdom, and you're going to run out of energy. You do not have that kind of time, energy, space. It's just impossible to do that. So you have to be very deliberate, very intentional. Even as we see, Jesus is the model, of relationship. When we see him with the 12, we see him with the 70, we see him with the 3. If there's anyone we need to be following, is Jesus. If Jesus himself, the Son of God, did it, how much more? And he was the greatest leader that ever lived.
Absolutely.
Because later his team impacted the world, changed the world,
flipped it upside down.
Exactly, and it was 12 men. But those three Pacific guys wrote epistles or wrote letters, are mentioned in such more highlight than the others. Maybe there's a reason for that. We don't got all the information, but there was a level of access that the other ones didn't have.
Okay.
And I think if we're going to have relationship, we have to recognize there are levels of relationship, and if we're going to be effective, maybe we should be following the pattern of Jesus.
Okay, so let me interject something here. So you had 3, right? One of them, John,
right,
got closer than the other 2.
It seems that way, doesn't it?
Well, at least that's how we get it from the scripture. So what did John do that was different from all the others?
And again, scripture doesn't really tell us, But obviously, he's got a different take on Jesus than the most of them, because John's version of Jesus is that of love, right? Of one of a shepherd.
Awesome.
So obviously, he had one side of Jesus that he was able to get a different perspective, and then we get the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
For God so loved the world. So obviously, he gets that intimate relationship that he had with Jesus. And again, we're going to have different types of relationships. They're going to be impactful, but you can't impact the masses, and on equal level. You've got to start with circles of relationship in order to be more effective. At least my intake is.
So John got so close that he leaned on Jesus's.
That's what it says.
At least that's what it says, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to be really close with someone to be able to demonstrate that kind of affection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So John knew something about Christ that others didn't know. Can it be said that Jesus did allow John to get that close?
It looks that way. So he gave him that access.
All right. So John was special. Then he was also the one that was allowed to help write the book of Revelation.
Yeah. At the end,
John was exiled in the Isle of Patmos, and he lived longer than all of them.
Yeah.
So there was a special purpose. So one of the things that we want you to take away from this is you got to know your friends.
And you got to define and align your relationships.
Define and align your relationships. God bless you.